We're about to get hit with our first snowstorm of the season, 8 to 12 inches of snow headed our way. I've got a cold day IPA ready to go, and today I want to go through the 5 pieces of most essential gear that I have to get me through those winter months. Cheers, beer runners. Thanks for joining me for another video. If this is your first time on the channel, I hope you'll click that subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. Go ahead, give it a thumbs up. That just helps other people find the content as well. But like I said, we're gonna be going through a list of those 5 pieces of essential gear that help get me through those cold winter months. But before we jump into the gear itself, I just wanted to go over a couple of quick kind of tips and tricks that I use just to make sure that I am dressed to survive, especially during the coldest days of the year. Some things to keep in mind just to help you stay comfortable on those runs to get through your winter training season. If you're not interested in the tips, go ahead and skip straight ahead to the gear. I'll have the timestamps down below. But if you are interested, the first thing that you really have to pay attention to, my first tip, is just knowing how to dress for winter. And what I mean for that is the few things that you can pay attention to just to make sure that you're dressed appropriately for the conditions. Always check the forecast before you go out for the run. I always recommend that year round, but especially in the winter months, it is incredibly important not only to check what the temperature is, if there's going to be any kind of rain, snow, sleet, anything like that, but also what the wind chill is. I'd say that is probably, maybe outside of snow or rain, the wind chill is maybe the biggest factor to help get an idea of the temperature that you should dress for when going out for your run. And what I mean by the temperature you should dress for is you don't want to necessarily dress as if the temperature is what the feels like temperature is. When we're out running, we're gonna warm up quite a bit, especially after that first mile or two. So what I would recommend doing is taking a look at that feels like temperature, adding 10 to 15 degrees to that number, and dress as if that was the temperature outside, because that's about how you're gonna be feeling once you're nice and warmed up for the run on that workout. I would also say here, everyone is different. So one thing I also really like to do in the winter is when I get back from a run, when I go to write down any notes or anything like that in my run log, I take note of how I felt in the apparel that I was wearing. Was I too hot? Was I too cold? What was the weather? Was it windy? Was it raining? Etc. Taking notes on the gear so that I can remember for next time how to dress a little bit more appropriately. And then the next tip I have is really just in relation to the gear itself, some features that you want to keep an eye out for that gear that's going to be most effective in the winter months, and you will definitely show through once I get into the gear portion of this video. But just a couple things to be aware of. One of the biggest things, biggest considerations to take into account is going to be moisture wicking layers, especially for that base layer. You want a gear that's going to pull the moisture off of your body. We've all been there before. I think one of the worst feelings when you're out for a winter run or just working outside is once your body starts to sweat, if you do cool off and you catch some kind of draft or anything like that, that sweat on your body instantly cools you down because the air catches that moisture, it really freezes you, and it's just a sudden chill when you kind of have that cold sweat on your body. So you want that moisture wicking gear that's going to wick the moisture away from your body so that even if you do start to cool off, you don't have that cold moisture directly against your skin. Along the same lines, moisture resistant clothing is going to be great as well, especially if there is going to be any kind of precipitation, whether that be rain, sleet, or snow. I don't run in a ton of waterproof gear just because a lot of times when I have waterproof gear, the breathability isn't as good, but I do look for some moisture resistance in a lot of my running gear for the winter so that if it is snowing, anything like that, I know that I'm gonna be able to make it longer into the run before the moisture gets through that outer layer down onto my skin. Because again, once the moisture gets down to your skin level and cools off, that's when you really start getting those chills out on those winter runs. So if you can have some kind of outer layer that has good moisture resistance to prevent that from happening, that's a huge consideration for the winter months. Not only do we want moisture resistance, but also one of the biggest considerations I have for my winter gear is wind resistance. I think wind is one of the biggest factors on the winter runs in terms of making me just miserably uncomfortable. If it's heavy winds, if it's freezing cold, and you add moisture into that, just the wind cutting through your gear chills you straight to the bone. So I always look for good wind resistance on especially my outer layers so that I can keep myself nice and warm. You don't need a lot of like heavy coats or things like that if you have a good wind resistant outer layer, because a lot of times what's chilling you off so much is that wind cutting through your clothing. So if you have something to defend against that wind to prevent it from reaching down into some of those inner layers of your gear, it's gonna make such a huge difference in how comfortable you are on the run. Next up that I'm happy to say has been a consideration I think a lot more companies are taking into account when designing gear, and that is high visibility gear. We have a lot less sunlight, which means a lot more runners are either running early in the morning before sunrise or when they get off work well past sunset. We're spending a lot more time out in the dark, so I always wanna find gear that's first at least bright colors, not dark colors, not just straight black that's gonna make me disappear into the night. I want something bright that's gonna make me well seen. And if it isn't a bright color, I wanna make sure it has reflective material incorporated into the design to make sure that if headlights catch me or anything like that, again, just making sure I am highly visible to the traffic around me to make myself a little bit safer on the run. And then the last thing that I would say, which again, you'll see in some of the gear that I'm gonna go over, but is the adaptability of the gear you have. And what I mean by that is a lot of times conditions can change pretty rapidly on the winter run, whether it's a storm coming through, whether it's you warming up and suddenly you're overheated, or you're cooling off, you need to add layers. I really like to find gear that has multiple uses or that is able to be adapted to the current conditions. And it'll be easier to show once I show some of the gear that I have, but basically having gear that allows me to make changes mid-run to make myself more comfortable. Whether that's shedding layers, opening up extra vents, etc. It may be a completely different forecast outside by the time you end the run compared to when you were starting. So I wanna make sure that I have gear that can change along with the changing weather. All right, so that's enough about just things to look for in your gear. So now I'll get into some of the specific gear itself. I'm really just doing broad strokes here. I don't wanna get into the nitty gritty. I could probably do a whole video on each individual piece of gear, but I'm just talking about, again, those essential pieces of gear that I always go to gravitate towards in those winter months that are coming with me on almost every run to keep me comfortable, keep me safe on those runs. So I guess with that being said, we might as well kick it off with some of the outer layers. If you've been following me for very long, chances are you've probably seen this piece of gear. This is the Brooks Elite Canopy jacket. This is an incredible piece of gear for all year round. First off, it is incredibly, incredibly lightweight. I mentioned you don't need big, bulky gear if it's designed well. So this is a very, very thin, but very well protected wind-resistant outer layer. In the winter, what I really like this for is that wind protection. A lot of the under layers I have, base layers I have, aren't gonna give me the protection against the wind. If there's a strong wind out, I might as well be going shirtless. Without this, you can just feel that cold wind cut straight through a lot of my clothes. So I'll throw this on. Again, it's very lightweight, but just by blocking out the wind, it helps to hold in some of my body heat, keep me nice and warm, and just prevent that wind from cutting through the rest of my gear. I talked about the adaptability or versatility of clothing as well. One thing that I really like about this jacket is if it does get a little bit too warm, the entire jacket actually folds up into this side pocket right here. It's very easy. You can even do this while you're running. Just tuck the whole thing straight up inside this pocket. Go ahead and zipper it closed. And then it's got a strap on it right here so that you can strap it to your hand while you're running, nice and easy to carry. If I'm a little bit cold to start, but I start to warm up, I can always take this off, carry it along with me, or it's small enough that sometimes I might just stash it somewhere safe so that I can finish my run and then I'll grab it on the way home. Once it really starts to cool off in just those bitter, bitter cold months, I'll go for something a little bit heavier for the outer layer. I don't believe they actually make this vest anymore. This is the Nike Dry Fit running vest. It's like a synthetic down material coupled with maybe a long sleeve shirt, maybe the jacket on top of that, or maybe just a little bit thicker of a layer, and then the running vest. That's pretty much all I need to get through the winter months. I don't actually have a heavier running coat. I usually just couple a couple layers of long sleeves underneath the vest, and that keeps me plenty warm. I don't believe that this specific model of vest is still in production, but there are some pretty close equivalents on Nike's website. I'll link to down below if you are interested. But one thing you're probably noticing is, hey Ryan, you said high visibility is one of your top considerations. This is just a straight black vest. And so I did mention when bright colors aren't necessarily available, you wanna go with high visibility. So what I did is, I don't know if you've heard of Brilliant Reflective. They just make some iron-on and stick-on reflective strips. So I put 2 of those on the front, right on the pocket. And then I also lined the back across the shoulders and down at waist level as well, just to make sure I light up when I got hit with headlights, flashlight, anything like that, to make myself nice and visible. But this is, again, not totally waterproof, but relatively water resistant. It takes a lot of moisture to slowly absorb through this and get down to the base layer. So this is a great protective outer layer just to keep your body heat in, keep your core nice and warm, while also keeping your arms free, a little bit lightweight. It doesn't weigh you down. It's a pretty lightweight vest on those, like I said, just very bitter cold days, this is usually what I'm reaching for. So those two items really make up the main outer layers that I'm going with on those winter runs. Again, I don't think it takes too much, and I've gone through sub-zero temperatures in just that gear. Again, I'll layer up some of those base layers, but then the vest outer layer or even the jacket sometimes keeps me plenty warm to make it through those runs. So the next thing that I want to talk about is some of the accessories that really make a big difference in helping to keep me comfortable. I'm going to kick off the accessories portion with the piece of gear that I specifically had in mind when I talked about versatility or adaptability of the gear, and that is these turtle gloves. I actually have 2 pairs currently. These are a little bit thinner, a little bit more wind resistant, more moisture wicking, kind of outer shell of a mitten. And then just this year, I got a thicker, kind of warmer fleece pair. Not quite as wind resistant as these gray ones, but a lot warmer just in terms of the fleece lined inside, a lot thicker material of a glove. Definitely helps keep your hands a lot warmer on the runs. But I have both of these pairs. What I was talking about when I was mentioning the adaptability of the gear, one thing that I love about turtle gloves is slip them on nice and easy. But then once I'm far enough into the run, once I'm through the warm up, I just get kind of that stagnant, humid, thick air around my hands. My hands start to get sweaty, kind of warm, and it seems like such a little thing, but can make me just so uncomfortable on the run. So there are a few different things that you can do with the turtle gloves. My first go-to is just to flip off the top and basically ventilate the glove so you don't have that warm air trapped in there. If that's still not enough, you can fold this down to actually expose the fingers a little bit more, and you can even pull the thumb out as well to basically wear them as fingerless gloves. In terms of the 2 different styles of glove, this I'm really only going for if it gets down below maybe like 35, 30 degrees when I want that thicker mitten. Otherwise, I'm going more with the shell. These are actually, even without the fleece, surprisingly warm because they hold in that heat. But again, same as before, if you start to get too hot, very easy to just fold the fingers down, ventilate that a little bit. And actually kind of my go-to way to wear the gloves for a lot of my runs in the winter is to open up the front just to ventilate, but leave the thumb covered because that's usually my digit that gets the most cold on the runs. In the spirit of layering, one thing I'll probably do once it starts to get even colder outside is, I mentioned, these are still pretty wind resistant, just not quite as wind resistant as these. This is almost like a neoprene material, but I'll probably just wear these underneath, layer the other gloves on top so I have that wind shell on top of that warmer turtle glove underneath. Obviously, you lose the ability to fully open up the gloves, but can still ventilate them a little bit just by opening up that top layer. These ones are actually brand new. It hasn't quite gotten cold enough to wear these too much. I've only taken them on a couple runs, but I'll have a full review of these coming out hopefully next week if you're interested. The next accessory I have, I think perfectly illustrates that you don't need a lot of material if the material is very well designed, and that is never more true than with this Buff Neckwarmer. This is their dry flex material, which is great for the winter months. This is a combination product. You've got this nice lightweight beanie combined with their neck warmer. And this is also a product that is very versatile depending on the conditions outside. Starting from warmest temperatures to coldest temperatures, once it starts to cool off, I'll always trade in the baseball cap that I'm normally running with just for this lightweight beanie. One thing that's nice that you probably can tell a little bit on camera, but not as much just because it's bright in the room, is this is a fully reflective material, and there's some even more reflective Buff logo on there that blends in a lot to the pattern, but when it gets hit with some kind of bright light, it really, really shines great. I'll throw this on as soon as the temperatures start to dip into the like low 40s, throwing on the beanie, mostly, especially just to keep my ears warm, as opposed to that baseball cap. Then once it dips even further down than that, I'll throw on the neck warmer. And the way that this is different from the traditional Buff, you can kind of see here, is that it's not a perfect rectangle or a perfect tube. It has this longer extended bottom to make sure that it fully comes down and tucks into the gear in the front so that you have full protection of your neck from any kind of wind from the elements to keep you nice and warm. The next step is just to throw this on, and a lot of times I just wear it around my neck, again, just to keep my neck, keep my skin protected from the elements from the wind that are really gonna cool me off. And then if needed, if it's really cold, just pull the front up, flip it over my nose, and basically make a makeshift balaclava, the full face covering, so that you just have this small space where your eyes are sticking out. But what I like about having the hat and the neck warmer combination is, as I've said time and time again, I'm gonna heat up throughout the run. So I love not having the full balaclava so that I can pull this down if I need to, so that I can expose my face, cool off a little bit if necessary. I'm not restricted to that full face coverage for the entire run if I don't need to be. Real quick, just to give you an idea of what this looks like on, I mentioned it just slides on nice and easy. Hopefully this doesn't mess up the mic too much. Tucks in to the shirt, pulls up over the face. Very simple face coverage, and then you can throw the hat on top. If you need that full coverage, it really does give you full protection of your face, neck. Another thing to point out here as well is I run with aftershocks, which are connected in the back. I have no issue with those fitting under the hat. They fit perfectly fine. Still don't notice them there. It's totally comfortable. Then if I warm up throughout the run, easy enough to sometimes I'll just pull it down so just my nose is exposed. If I really start to heat up, I'll just pull the whole thing down. Again, I really like having this as a two-piece instead of a full balaclava, so I can manipulate it as needed throughout the run. Put the hat back on. And then the last piece of gear probably doesn't stand out as a winter gear essential to most. I end up wearing this so much more in the winter than I do in the summer, and that is my Orange Mud Gear Vest Pro. Again, I have a full review of this if you'd like to check it out, because there are a ton of features I just don't have time to go into, but this is, of all the running hydration packs, running vests I've tested, by far my favorite. This is what got me through the Bandera 100K. There's just so much room for storage, so many different pockets, so many different options. And again, getting at that versatility, there's so many different ways to customize that vest. One thing that I did right off the bat is it comes with a bladder with a hose that goes over the top. I prefer to run with the bottles on the front, so I just got a couple of the Orange Mud soft bottles to throw into these front pockets. I typically run with just one bottle on the front, and then I'll throw my phone into this other pocket. But why I say this is really a piece of running gear that's super essential to me through the winter months is if I need to carry water, I hate carrying just a standalone water bottle in the winter, because when your hand is extended, especially around a water bottle, it is going to cool off and freeze so much faster than if you can keep your hand a little bit more balled up into a fist. Separating your fingers, separating your hands, my fingers especially, just freeze and lose circulation so much more quickly if I'm holding something on those runs. So I always want to go with the vest to have the water just on the front. The other thing that I love about this is I've mentioned throughout the video that oftentimes throughout a run, I'm gonna be shedding layers of gear. Don't have a ton of places to put that, so I love carrying this just empty so I can stuff things into the back if I need to. If I need to lose the gloves, need to lose the jacket, etc., just stuff those into the gear on the back, or I can even strap them to these ties on the back. Just super easy to store any excess gear that I need to stow once I start to heat up throughout the run. And then the last thing I'll say about this vest, just a quick tip if you do run with some kind of hydration vest in the winter months, when you take a sip from the water bottle, a common issue that you experience in the winter months is the water that's in the hose and in the mouthpiece freezes solid in between drinks. So eventually you may lose access to the water bottle because you get a frozen blockage in the hose. So super simple way to fix that is after every sip, just blow quickly into the hose so that you flush all the liquid back down into the bottle. Keep this clear with air. And that way fluid that's in the bottle is much less likely to freeze when it's all together, and you eliminate the risk of freezing any leftover liquid or water or anything like that that's stuck in this hose. I love this vest for all things running, all kind of endurance running or anything like that, but especially in the winter months to carry the water if I need it to save my precious hands, my precious fingers, but then also as extra storage to stow any gear that I need to shed along my runs. So there you have it. That is the essential winter running gear that I have with me on almost every run once the temperatures start to dip down. I will definitely be wearing plenty of these for my run on Wednesday when we're dealing with that horrific snowstorm. If you're interested in any of the gear, I'll link to it down below. Just a note about that, I do have affiliate links or use affiliate links with Amazon. So if you do decide to purchase any of this gear on Amazon, I do get a commission from that purchase. It does not cost you any extra. It just goes towards helping to support this channel, the blog. If you have any questions about any of the gear that I went over, please feel free to leave those down in the comments below. I love talking gear with other runners. I feel like everyone has different tips for how they stay warm. So let me know those down in the comments below as well. But if you enjoyed the video, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel if you don't already. As I mentioned before, please give it a thumbs up just to help others find the video as well. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on any future videos, click that bell so you go ahead and get a notification anytime I post new content. But thank you as always for tuning in. Stay stay tuned later this week where I'll have that video coming out running the Ben & Jerry's Brain Freezer 5K. Eating an entire pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream midway through a 5K was definitely interesting, but I'll have the full results for you coming later this week. But thank you as always for tuning in for the video. I appreciate it, and until next time, cheers.